kind of.
Yeah, no. It's definitely pretty good.
Exactly. What's up? What's up, everybody? How are we doing today? Welcome back to another live stream here on Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Velez with my co-host Patrick Billings. And Patrick, we got a fantastic stream to kind of break down today. As you guys can tell from the title, everything has just fallen into place for this Boston Celtics team. And it's absolutely perfect for this squad, setting them up for their future rounds, gearing them up for this playoff push to be defending champions once again. So we're going to dive in. We're going to look back at this Orlando Magic series and discuss how everything fell perfect into place for this Boston Celtics team, clearly beating the Magic in 5 games, and then looking ahead with the Celtics getting some extra rest, what that has for future implications on this team in the next series. Patrick, how you doing today? Absolute fantastic thing to be waking up to is the Celtics being done with the first round and being able to explore some possible scenarios instead of having a gut-wrenching type of discussion today.
Yeah, I'm hoping everyone was able to stay up a little bit of a late start over here on the East.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, you got to stick up for that one. And crazy first half, a little back and forth, and then just absolutely blown away as soon as Paolo gets his 5th foul. They take advantage and just play great Celtics basketball, Bruce. I mean, I'm fired up. Something about the Celtics in playoffs, I'm constantly getting fired up about, but I think it's just a thought of Al Horford in my mind. It just gets me fired up.
Al Horford, we talked about this yesterday, but clear playoff riser for this Celtics team, and that was put on display in this series. We've seen it in series past, right? But I feel like in this series, it's even needed even more for the Boston Celtics, right? Like we mentioned, kind of dealing with some injuries. Jayson Tatum dealing with the wrist. Jaylen Brown still being questionable into these games. Jrue Holiday missing those last couple instances. How do these stay ready guys like Al Horford coming through and delivering in key impact moments, not just offensively, but defensively as well, when the Celtics need him on both sides of the floor, is just so peak and just a key for the Celtics squad.
Well, I mean, I guess you would say it's a little bit terrifying for other teams, especially for the Knicks and Pistons, who's ever next, right, Bruce? I mean, 5
Yes,
games
yes.
against a tough Magic team. I think they were kind of getting undersold all season long. All those injuries, still a tough team regardless. I mean, you look at the record and you're like, why are the Celtics having a tough time with them? Well, you got to watch the Magic play basketball because the way that they match up with the Celtics specifically, it's a really tough matchup. And I mean, the perfect first round matchup to get the Celtics ready for this whole playoff run. I mean, they're just lengthy, they're tough, and you're going to see that in the next round with that same amount of toughness, whether it's Beef Stew or if it's any of those Nova guys that used to be my friends, but not anymore.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of a bittersweet series for you, Patrick. Obviously, being in Long Island, you got all your New York Knicks friends down with you. You got the Celtics versus your favorite college team in Nova with all those guys over there. That's
Brutal.
just a
It's brutal.
crazy.
It's brutal.
It's, you're rooting for Detroit, right? Are we pulling for Detroit?
You know what? I think I'm rooting for Detroit for Game 6 so that whoever comes next doesn't really have much of a break like the Celtics
Yes.
need. I mean, all those injuries, which we're gonna get into. Jrue Holiday,
Mm-hmm.
much needed rest. Jaylen Brown, maybe some much needed rest, even though he looks fantastic.
Yep.
Tatum looks fantastic, and hopefully, Porzingis gets some rest too. Kind of get that head kind of clear. Maybe he's still a little foggy, but yeah. I mean, 5 days rest. We were saying, right, Bruce?
5 days rest, and that is going to be key for this Boston Celtics team. Patrick, you bring that up, and we'll kind of get at that first here. I think that's a great topic to kind of really get into for this stream, right? Because the Celtics had a lot of things that really kind of fell into their lap here with this series, and definitely getting this extra rest was needed. You saw the Celtics, the Pacers, and the Knicks all had 3 chances to kind of clinch, get their series wrapped up. Only 2 were able to get wrapped up, the Pacers series and the Celtics, and that gives the Celtics some extra breathing room, a little bit of extra rest gearing up for these playoffs. As we saw from Ben Raudback, this was the first person I saw that tweet this out. The Celtics will open their playoff series against the winner of the Knicks versus Pistons on Monday, and the full schedule was released, right? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and then the following Sunday if Game 7 is necessary for this series. But this is key for the Celtics, right? Not only do they have some injuries that they need to rest, kind of gear up for, get ready to go with getting into this next physical playoff series versus a Knicks or Pistons team, getting that extra 5 days is key, but also the Pistons and the Knicks have some injuries versus themselves, and they have also had some tough physically hard battled series. So keeping that series extended longer and not really starting the series up right away for the Celtics, I think is very crucial.
Yeah, I think one thing as well that I'd like to touch on, obviously being from New York, but I am a Celtics fan. Of course, I get to
Hmm.
watch a lot of Knicks games as well. Um, they play a lot, those starters. I mean, some of the lineups this whole year of guys who play the most minutes together are mostly all Knicks starters. So they really get tired and they kind of fall into this way. And I like if we're talking about matchups a little bit, I know we're gonna kind of get to that. The Celtics did get the season sweep. I don't really remember what they got on the Pistons, but I mean, there's a lot of confidence with this Celtics team right now, especially after that Magic playoff series. I think that they have more confidence in whatever matchup comes next than they did in this one. I think that this was their toughest battle until the conference finals.
I would agree, and I think defensively it's going to be their toughest battle. We saw the Magic; they were ranked one of the top 3 defenses, I believe. I think they were number 2 across the NBA here. So Celtics obviously had that physicality at the wing position as well. We know the Knicks definitely have some tough wings, but I think versus another Pistons team, which we'll get into a little bit later, it's going to be key for the Celtics team on these matchups as well. But Patrick, one thing I really want to dive into and kind of talking about this discussion, right, when looking at everything falling perfectly in place for the Celtics, there's a lot of key players that really helped out this series. And I think the main person and the key instrument that we really need to talk about for the Celtics team is Jayson Tatum, because Jayson Tatum has been absolutely electric for the Celtics squad. We saw in the first game, didn't have the best shooting night and obviously tweaked his wrist, and in game 2, he did not play. But after that, Jayson Tatum came alive for this Boston Celtics team, right? Injuring his wrist is no issues for the superstar as he gets 3 straight 30-point games for the Boston Celtics here, right? And if we want to look at some tweets from this series, yes, you got that little bit of a signature move for Jayson Tatum, I guess now, one of his new signature celebrations really coming in. But he leads all players in playoff isolation frequency at 30.8.1%. Only 3 players are above 30%. That's Tatum and Harden. His 1.5 points per possession is the best by far. And he did that once again, like I mentioned, against the number 2 defense in the entire NBA. In addition to that, Jaylen was also fantastic on a 1.4 points per possession on a 22% frequency. But just to mention, Jayson Tatum, right? Patrick, as I look through some of these stats here and kind of highlight 3 straight 35-point games. We know we talked about the free throw percentages as well. He was clearly dialed in shooting, but also other ways as well for the Celtics squad.
I mean, we know how vital the free throw line is for the Celtics. I've talked about it before. A lot of the stars like Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown missing free throws. They shoot it well, but not as fantastic as they probably should, especially Jaylen Brown. But I mean, 37 for 37 was that final number, Bruce, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you can't beat that, especially getting to the line and taking advantage of getting to the hole, even an and 1 3 at the end before he got taken out last game. I mean, he just has full confidence in this game right now. Once he got on that run in game 3, he felt more confident in his shooting, and that wrist injury just seemed like there was nothing anymore, and he's feeling real good about himself. And just what are they gonna say now? Like you
What
said, what do you say now?
I completely agree with that sentiment. We see this tweet from Ian, who was on here. Celtics players with 35 plus point games in 3 straight playoff games. Only Larry Bird and Jayson Tatum. Crazy stat to see. You mentioned that free throw percentage as well for Tatum. Tatum gets critiqued for maybe not taking it to the rack as much by Celtics fans. A lot of Celtics fans, may not be the happiest about Tatum in that regard, but he was doing it in this series. We look at this tweet from Taylor Snow. Only 5 times in Celtics history has a player averaged 30 points per game in a first round series, and Jayson Tatum is the only one to do it twice. twice, ladies and gentlemen, just putting himself into some accolades there. This was the tweet that I wanted to find right here from Underdog that we really highlighted in yesterday's game. 36, 9 and 4, 37, 14 and 3, 35, 8 and 10. Just ridiculous numbers. And this is all coming off of a wrist injury, ladies and gentlemen, right? This is not just like Jayson Tatum just is just magically going off in the playoffs. This is all after coming off of what everyone thought was going to be a scare, specifically sitting out in game two as well. A lot of Celtics fans thought this might be a little bit of a lingering injury, but it is not for the superstar. And he put that on full display in yesterday's and all these games, but the last three games specifically.
The one thing that stood out to me also is his finishing, like you
Mm-hmm.
talked about. I think that's one thing that has kind of aggravated me with Tatum at points, and it's just because he'll get so aggressive and he'll lay it up. I want him to dunk the crap out of the ball if he has the opportunity, because when he just has to realize. If you guys have seen on Twitter, when Jayson Tatum realizes that he's 6'10", I know they list him a little bit shorter, but he's got to be. But when he realizes how tall he is, he's a different type of player at the rim. I mean, when he's not afraid to kind of just dunk on somebody, he's just really aggressive and gets real confident at the basket, and he gets to the line. Especially with how confident he is at the line right now, I could see that totally like getting more evolved into his game as we get later on in the playoffs, especially against the Knicks. So to say, they are not a good defensive team. I think we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
And going off one of the best defensive teams to possibly one of the worst, especially with Cat in the paint, not a good paint defender. Mitchell Robinson, obviously a solid offensive rebounder, but he hasn't really brought too much in that series as well. But I mean, Bruce, I think if he attacks the lane a lot more and kind of brings that attention in there, opens up a lot more for those open 3-pointers to a Derrick White or an Al Horford.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Patrick. And we saw that kind of in this series, but I think specifically versus another team, versus the New York Knicks, one that is a little bit weaker in the defense, especially in the paint defense as well with Karl Anthony Towns. It's going to be really keen and to see how aggressive Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown can be, kind of driving and attacking that paint and using what the Celtics rarely utilized best last year's in the playoffs, which is the drive and kick to the 3-point line, even having multiple passes after that first initial attempt at the 3-point line to really kind of find the best shot because they have all those 3-point shooters out there. We saw that clearly put on display last night in the second half. And Patrick, I want to turn our eyes to another player that I just mentioned in Jaylen Brown, as he was also fantastic in this series here for the Boston Celtics. We saw in yesterday's game 5, 23 points, 6 rebounds for Brown. Boston has won 16 straight playoff games when he scores 20 points, which I think is just a crazy stat to see. And then I also saw this up here as well from Celtics repeat season that Jaylen Brown has never lost a first round playoff series. He is 8-0 in the first round. I don't necessarily know. I think they lost to the Nets in the first round a couple of seasons ago, but I don't know if Jaylen Brown was playing in that series. That's maybe where it could kind of be a little bit of a asterisk there, but great stats to see from Jaylen Brown. And once again, we kind of mentioned he's also dealing with a little bit of an injury. He was questionable for these last couple of games. So once again, it is key that him alongside other players on the Celtics team like Jayson Tatum get this much necessary rest, right? Like Noah Dalzell says right here, this is going to be fantastic for that knee that still has some lingering pain, even if it's not showing in the game there for Jaylen Brown across these stretches.
Yeah, I can't stop talking about it with you, Bruce. I mean, it's just unbelievable how good that knee looks. I'm like
Yes.
totally blown away, and I couldn't be happier. But he's also dealing with that dislocated finger as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? I believe it's in his left hand. Um, Obviously, as people like to say, he has no left hand anyway. So if you want to take it that way, I guess it won't affect his game whatsoever. But I guess you got to start watching some Celtics basketball. Other than that, I mean, Jaylen Brown has constantly getting more confident in his game, and like we keep talking about, he's getting to his spots. He just has to get comfortable getting to his spots on the elbow, just being confident and getting to the hole. Like a lot of these other guys, I could keep saying it, but we are a 3-point shooting team. But we saw, like I talked about in the video yesterday with Sam Hauser kind of going back door. A lot of teams expect us to shoot the three a ton. So they're not really looking at anyone backdoor cutting. And I think that's going to be a huge thing, especially in this next series as well, because they're going to be looking for us to shoot a ton of threes. And if Jaylen Brown can get on those backdoor cuts, I mean, it should be real easy for the Celtics.
You mentioned the backdoor cutting. We talked about that with Sam Hauser in his game yesterday, which he was very, very solid at doing. And I completely agree with Jaylen Brown specifically with, like I mentioned, his attackive and aggressiveness coming from the paint. We mentioned him being on the 3-point line as well, kind of coming in and kind of finding those easy lanes to kind of really get to for this Celtics team. And you mentioned that. And I think another player as well could really add to that in Jrue Holiday. Once again, he's dealing with this injury for the Boston Celtics, but this kind of falls perfectly for the Celtics. Like we mentioned, he gets that extra rest, like we keep hammering about. And this new article just got released by Noah Dalzell right before we just went live. And when looking up Jrue Holiday, it popped up. So I wanted to kind of go over this as Joe Mazzulla gave an update on Jrue Holiday's injury today, saying that he's working his tail off to get back there for the Boston Celtics. And it's good that we're able to take care of business to get guys the extra time to rest. He's getting better and better each day. And this is great news for the Boston Celtics fans to hear, right? We saw Holiday in last year's playoff really, really turn up in that Eastern Conference Finals series. And there were some late game heroics that he had versus the Indiana Pacers to seal some games for the Celtics to make it to the finals. And we saw in game 3, those antics could have been used versus the Orlando Magic, specifically when the Celtics lost that game with some mishaps towards the late of the game. And I think his impact is going to be, once again, another key one that the Celtics are going to have to use and vitalize going into the next series versus New York specifically, or Detroit, going up against some top tier guards in Jalen Brunson and Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, I mean, Jrue Holiday is a big body. He's about six foot
Yes.
five, playing the guard position, one of the best defenders we've seen in the league in the past couple of years at the guard position. I mean, he definitely could have been utilized to guard Franz or even Paolo, which they had trouble with all series long. But you'd rather have two guys beat you than the rest of the team. I mean, it's outnumbered. So, I mean, Jrue Holiday again is just a pivotal point for this Celtics team, but they're able to fill in with other guys. I guess they're just very confident in someone like Al Horford to step in
Yep.
and kind of just guard on the 3-point line as well, like we constantly talk about. We're repeating ourselves a lot here, but it
Mm-hmm.
really is the point of how good this Celtics team is with the depth and how good everyone else can play defense. Because you look at that starting five, you really have to talk about who probably is the worst defender on the floor, and you can have a long conversation about it. So Jrue Holiday adding on to that is just another plus that this Celtics team can have going down the line. But you definitely want to see him get on the court. But these about 10, 11 days of rest that he's about to get before game one. I mean, I don't know if we'll see him. He has no timeable return right now. I don't. They're not really talking about it too much, but we know how the Celtics are with injuries. They don't like to really tell
Yep.
everything that's going on. Secretive, which okay, like I understand, but I really want to know what's going on. But Jrue Holiday definitely got to find the floor a little bit, especially with some big guards coming in with Brunson kind of a little banged up, and as well as Cade Cunningham if that becomes the case.
I completely agree. And not to just mention that he can also guard those guards, but he can also take down those big men, right? So having him on a guy like Isaiah Stewart or Jalen Duran in some instances versus the Pistons, or even Karl Anthony Towns, if the Celtics have some injury come, hopefully not, but to Porzingis or Al Horford or something down the line, they need to have that extra needed size. He can be a key X factor in helping them guard defensively and helping them in those late game situations as well. And I love how you mentioned that, like, Al Horford, Jrue Holiday, all these guys can really like step up and deliver because basically everyone on this team can, right? Peyton Pritchard had even stepped up and delivered without Jrue Holiday, kind of replacing his offensive impact at the guard position, like you mentioned. Al Horford, we had that video kind of breaking down how the NBA had never seen this before, with him flying in, bringing out that Superman mentality, getting those big time blocks down in Orlando in Game 4, clearly taking over. Derrick White had that very explosive Game 1 and was very effective on the defensive end with that key moment of playing that 1v4 defense. Patrick, this Celtics team had some really great guys step up alongside Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown when they were there, but also when they were out to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw the Tatum quote kind of talking about how he really feels more comfortable
Yes.
now than he's ever felt because he kind of got that burden off of his shoulder of
Mm-hmm.
the championship. So they know they've been here before, but they don't want to get too comfortable. But they know that they have to take care of business, and that's all on their mind. But you did bring up a name, Kristaps Porzingis. I think that's someone that I do. Oh, if you want to read this quote here, this season was like the most relaxed and carefree that I've been in my career, understanding that we won last year and we accomplished the ultimate goal. I just enjoyed this season of playing carefree basketball and not having that hang over my head. And you could totally see that in the last three
Yep.
games. The first game kind of coming up a little bit, first game jitters,
Mm-hmm.
it happens. The second game dealing with that wrist injury and then kind of sitting out the next game, or was it game two? He
Two.
sat out. Game two, right? Game two, he sat out. and then kind of dealing with that, that extra rest.
Hmm.
Tatum has not missed a playoff game, so it probably took a lot to make him sit out.
Yes.
Honestly, hear about any of that, but I'm sure that was really tough to keep him out. But I mean, man, the Celtics team does look relaxed and confident. But going into that next series, Bruce, like we said, Kristaps Porzingis, hopefully he kind of gets some offense together. They do love when he gets involved in the offense, but if they play those Knicks, man, he's going back in blood against that Knicks team like he always has. He kind of has that chip on his shoulder for him, and I don't know how you see his role coming up in the playoffs as of next series, but I definitely think he needs to step up a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. So I'm going to pull up this tweet here real quick. But before we get into that, Patrick, when looking back at this, right, when we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago before getting into this series, we kind of had our MVPs for the series, right? I picked Derrick White. You picked Kristaps Porzingis. And I thought, and we both thought that both of them could kind of bring out that role. We saw Derrick White do it for really well in game one and for a majority of the series hold his own. Porzingis stepped up in game two, but had moments where he looked really solid for the Celtics team, having that impactful dunk in game four, but not really coming through fully. And from this tweet from Dan Greenberg, we can kind of see that, right? Derrick White, 1.24 points per possession on 57% shooting as the pick and roll ball handler in round one, top 86th percentile. Very good. Kristaps Porzingis, on the other hand, 0.61 points per possession on 18.8% shooting on post ups in round one, 7th percentile. Very bad. And Patrick, you mentioned this, right? We saw Kristaps Porzingis. We thought he'd have that size advantage going against some of these bigs and be able to score. And we saw multiple times Corey Joseph on him in the post not being able to do stuff. Some of these smaller guards, him having some trouble, and ultimately Porzingis having some weakness. But I think going into this next series, depending on who they play, they're going to have to use Porzingis as that floating scoring big from the perimeter. And hopefully his shot can come back. I think he'll be was a little bit cold this series, but I think he'll be able to find his footing offensively, specifically versus a New York Knicks or Pistons team that is a little lackluster at the defensive side compared to the Orlando Magic. And I think for the Celtics to kind of really optimize Porzingis to his best ability, they have to use him how they used him in that last game that they played in New York, where I believe that was the close one, or the where he hit the really deep three from the logo. They need to utilize him and get him back to that version of Porzingis, where they have double big running around with Horford guarding on Karl Anthony Towns, and they can use him as like a Kevin Durant type scorer on that offense.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we really didn't kind of think about was how the Magic were going to go about their offense,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't shoot the three ball well.
Yep.
And it seemed like they were constantly getting to the basket, which was forcing him to get into foul trouble. So I think he kind of turned into more of a paint defender than he was
Mm-hmm.
as a stretch big. So when that's the case, I mean, someone's not going to be scoring out of all these 6, 7 guys that the Celtics
Yes.
constantly run out there. And I think that we have to remember that not everyone's going to average 20, even though they can. Derrick
Mm-hmm.
White averaged 20, about 20 points per game in that series, which was huge. We know he's going to step up constantly. But I mean, with a guy like Porzingis, I think his role was to be more of a defender this series
Yep.
than it was a scorer. But I mean, you still want to see him get his regular buckets. Couple tough entry passes down low, like we saw on the pick and roll, especially last game. A couple miscues, a little too
Mm-hmm.
high for Fournette and Porzingis, which is
Yep.
unbelievable. They're both 7+ foot tall. Um, but I think again, I think next series, whoever it may be, let's just say the Knicks, because they do have the lead. I think that he could totally just destroy that defense with every possibility that he can, because no one can guard him on the 3 point line, and
Mm-hmm.
clearly don't have that post up defense either.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think even versus Detroit, which we'll get into in a little bit as we get into this here, I think versus Detroit as well, depending on Isaiah Stewart, I don't think Jalen Duran can contain him. I don't think Paul Reed's going to be able to contain him. And I feel like Kristaps Porzingis would have a lot more success in the low post, working down low as an offensive creator. And I think you kind of hit it right there at the beginning as well, where you talk about not everyone can average 20, but not everyone is going to average 20. And I think it's kind of trying to figure out who's going to be that key difference maker in each series. I feel like for the Celtics, clearly it was Jayson Tatum with his clear takeover at the end of this series, but those other supporting guys that really stepped up were Al Horford and Derrick White, mainly for the Celtics team. Jaylen Brown, obviously, as well, but those were the core four. And I think in this series, we're going to see Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown do it once again, but might not be Al Horford and Derrick White, like you mentioned. It might be Kristaps Porzingis and a Jrue Holiday comeback really taking over. And I think that's the key ingredients, not only for just success in the NBA, but why the Celtics are so successful, right? They have all that depth. Not even just those guys, but you go even deeper, right? Luke Cornett, Peyton Pritchard, Even Torrey Craig played some solid defense in the minutes that he was playing for the Celtics late in these games. All these guys have these roles that they can come in and make impacts in, depending on the matchup. And I think that's key as well for the Celtics and what really set them up perfectly for this rest of the playoffs, right? You get all those guys that extra rest, and they can even lock in to be better going into the next series.
Yeah, and I think like we talked about, Joe Mazzulla likes to talk about how they can win without shooting the three well.
Mm-hmm.
We proved that point. Kind of keep it in the game in the first half last game, and then they just kind of got hot. I mean, you can't even argue that.
Yep.
But I think that's a big thing too. I think that they're going to get more opportunities for open threes in this next series, whoever it is. But now they really know how they could get some buckets if they're not shooting well, and I think that's a scary sight.
I completely agree. Patrick, I'm going to ask you one last thing on this Orlando Magic series, and it's something I just kind of thought in my head. So I'll kind of give my first reaction first, and I'll have to hear yours. But I want to hear your kind of final takeaway from this Orlando Magic series, right? It could be the Celtics, could be Orlando Magic related. Mine kind of is both, but kind of alludes to that last game that we saw in game five, right? The Celtics, you mentioned, failed to shoot the basketball successful from 3 point range in the first half, even though Al Horford was this close of hitting 2 threes in that first half. But the Celtics were only down 2 points in that game, right? And I think the clear takeaway from this series is that Orlando is going to be a tough physical team for the Celtics in the future, right? They match up well. They have so much young talent. They have they have much draft capital as well that they can look to trade. And I do believe that they add some scoring, add some shooting, and even if they had that scoring or shooting in this game, if they had 2 or 3 more 3 point minutes made and it's a 9 or 11 point deficit going into halftime, it's a much different scenario for the Boston Celtics with their morale and how they're feeling about able to come back. And I think that was a clear problem addressed within this series. The Celtics were just too powerful for this Magic team offensively, even if they can match them defensively and physically. And I really think that the Magic and the Pistons too, but the Magic are going to be a top team to match up against the Celtics in the next coming years, and it's going to be scary. And I can't wait for those future matchups in the future.
Yeah, I think they're kind of going to turn into a little bit of a Pacers, a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
team, like kind of under the radar, but plays a lot of people well.
Yep.
If we definitely start shooting the three ball well, I mean, then it's really going to be creating problems. I think that's something that Franz and Paolo both should be doing in the offseason. Just shoot a bunch of threes, get used to getting them
Mm-hmm.
off the dribble, even off the catch. But I think that Orlando is going to be a destination spot for some players in the future. I mean, those two are absolutely unbelievable. It stinks that they had missed out on Suggs, missed up on Mo Wagner as well, who was actually
Yep.
be a six man of the year candidate before he got hurt, which is crazy to say, former Celtic. But I mean, those guys are a really, really tough team, especially defensively. If they start figuring out how to shoot the three ball, I mean, they've got all the tools they need, and I mean, a couple more pieces, a couple guys getting a little bit older, getting some more experience, like Anthony Black. Maybe
Yep.
if Cole Anthony scores more points than he has fouls after he's talking smack, maybe that'll help. Who knows?
I completely agree. I think they definitely need to address that Cole Anthony smack talking with the point right, the smack talk to point ratio right there. But I'm excited to see what the Orlando Magic can bring. I think it was a great series. We both had 5 or 6 Celtics. Basically, we're gonna wrap it up in then, and I'm excited to kind of get into the next series, and that's what we're gonna get into here with the final 5 to 10 minutes here of the stream. Is kind of looking ahead for the next series, right? Because we mentioned things fell perfectly into place for the Celtics, right? Jayson Tatum's getting this extra rest, Jrue Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and allows Porzingis to kind of figure out what he's going to be able to do to make an impact in the next series. And with the Knicks and Pistons kind of extending the series as well, it gives them that extra rest. We know that they're coming back on Monday, but the Knicks and the Pistons will be playing once again tomorrow back in Detroit. And this series still could get extended, could still go to 7 games if the Pistons are able to pull up a victory here at home. They've yet to do that this season. But when looking at these two teams, Patrick, we're going to kind of analyze them and go over the Celtics preparations for each team. We've kind of touched base on already a little bit, but kind of really hammering on it. Let's dive in on the Knicks. Obviously, you being from New York, having some Knicks fans that are friends, you know a little bit more inside on the Knicks. So for those Celtics fans and kind of looking at this season series so far and the preparations, how do you think it will be versus this Knicks squad if the Celtics run into them?
Well, I think we saw it all season long. I think those first three games against the Knicks were 30 plus wins, somewhere in that area, and that last one was a little bit closer. I think still a double digit win as well. Something to look at too in this game, real quick, is Detroit has not won a home playoff game
Yes.
since '08. So this game definitely means something in Detroit as well. So this one's going to be scrappy. But like I said a little bit earlier in the live stream, those starters play a ton of minutes. Mikal Bridges has not really been able to step up when needed with those no Josh Hart and no Brunson minutes. We saw that in the end of the game yesterday as Mikal, he was a great scorer in college. I'm a huge Villanova fan. I got to watch all these guys play a ton of games, so I know what he's capable of as a scorer, but they're going to be scrappy. I mean, they're going to have a lot of guys that are going to make up some time on the defensive end and really have Brunson kind of carry them offensively like he has in the fourth quarter. He's been truly unbelievable in the fourth quarter, but he did tweak that ankle again. So we got to see
Yep.
how he looks coming out of this game in game 6. But I really don't see the Knicks much as a threat as I felt with the Magic. I definitely feel a little bit more comfortable, especially with the size that they have and how they are defensively. The Celtics have played them well all season long. So I think their bench depth as well is not too strong. I think Cam Payne definitely saved them in the first game, I believe it was, where he
Yep.
kind of went a little bit crazy. But I mean, the Celtics are able to contain that. They run a little bit of a 9-man rotation, and it's a really strong one. And I think that if they're able to kind of hold on to Brunson scoring a little bit, and as well as Karl Anthony Towns, someone else is going to have to step up for them, and it's probably going to be OG Anunoby, and he can't do that for the whole series long.
Yeah, I think you really hit on a lot of notes there for the Celtics and for this matchup here. I am a little bit nervous going into this matchup if they do run into the Knicks
Sure.
because I do think that it will be physical and stuff like that. But you brought up some key points. One being the bench depth. I think the Celtics really outmatch that here to the Knicks. You bring up obviously they play all their starters. They get a lot of minutes, and that's going to wear them down and tire them out, specifically against a Celtics team that knows how to pick opponents' weaknesses, knows how to attack those seals. We also mentioned that their front court is a little bit their front court, yes, is a little bit shaky with obviously Karl Anthony Towns, Mitchell Robinson. I believe they also have Precious Achua kind of running in there. I don't know if he's going to be
He
getting.
hasn't really been playing. He hasn't
Yeah,
really been,
so
Ariel Huckporty. He
yep.
finally back from injury. He's a lot of fun for some Knicks fans, but I don't see him getting any minutes either. This is what Tibbs does. He
Yep.
plays all the main guys. They're gonna get tired. And just real quick, Bruce. I think one player for the Celtics that could really be interesting is Peyton Pritchard in this series because of
Hmm.
how well he's able to change his speed. He's gonna really just collapse that defense, especially Brunson. Especially with that ankle, he's having a ton of issues. I'm curious to see how they're going to guard this Celtics team as well. Who's going to guard Jaylen Brown? Who's going to guard Tatum? Josh Hart's going to be playing a lot of minutes, and so is Bridges. So it's going to be really interesting for them defensively.
Yeah, they're going to have a lot of struggles kind of matching up with this Celtics team, something that the Magic didn't really have troubles with. Obviously, they're a little bit better offensively with Brunson, with Karl Anthony Towns working that pick and roll. So you're going to have to be able to kind of combat that a little bit better. But I do agree with you that I think the Celtics team should be able to take care of this series versus New York. With the season series kind of being telling already, I think they have that confidence going in. Obviously, New York's going to want to change that sentiment here, but I do believe that the Celtics will be kind of riding in with that momentum. You mentioned Peyton Pritchard. I think he's going to be in a little bit of a duel of his own versus Deuce McBride, who hasn't looked really great for the playoffs in the Knicks. So I do believe that, he'll be able to kind of take over as that statement guard, as that backup guard in the series. And I think that's going to be a real momentum swinger for the Boston Celtics. And I think regardless of who they play, they're going to be able to take care of the series, right? Like I think that we don't really start getting concerned until we get to the conference finals or to the finals with those potential matchups kind of looming here. I think the Celtics can kind of use their rotations and their matchup abilities with double big or running a little bit smaller for their best ability versus these opponents. When you look at the Pistons, Patrick, and we'll kind of get into them as well. What are your kind of main takeaways from their series? They obviously got a little bit of a bigger guard in Cade, going to be a little bit of a tougher opponent for the Boston Celtics, but similar to the Orlando Magic, their shooters are a little bit streaky and not hitting some shots. The Celtics could get some big wins versus a Pistons team.
Yeah, they've had a lot of promise. They've had a lot of guys step up. I think one thing that really does them well is like their team, like them as a team as a whole, how much confidence they have and like excitement they have. Like they have a lot of like I don't know the exact word that I'm looking for, but like I guess it's like somewhat confidence in themselves where they're talking a lot of smack, they're celebrating a lot, especially Malik Beasley. I hate him right now because of all the celebrations that he's doing, but he second best 3-point mades in the season. Can't even get my words right now talking about these guys. But Cade Cunningham, unbelievable all series long, and they got Dennis Schroeder as well. He was actually a really solid guard, and he could play next to Cade Cunningham. And then Duran as well, down low. He's a strong guy down low, and he's going to be tough to match up with, especially on the lob threat. But Celtics play a little bit of a similar way. They got Tobias Harris, they got Tim Hardaway Jr. They've got some good pieces, and I think that's why they're giving the Knicks so much trouble because of their depth as well. And they've definitely got some guys that they can rely on other than their starters.
I agree, and I think that out of all three teams that the Celtics could potentially play or have played, this would be the team that matches them up best with their depth, right? They have those guys that can kind of go out, and this is even without Jaden Ivey being out for the season, right? So you know that this Pistons team is still going to take that leap. They're still going to keep getting better. But you saw Tim Hardaway Jr., I believe it was in Game 3, was absolutely electric from three-point range, and that can just kind of happen with a guy like him, Tobias Harris. If Isaiah Stewart comes back, he can bring out that bulldog mentality and just absolutely be ferocious down low and maybe get into some more quarrels with an Al Horford or a Kristaps Porzingis. So it's definitely going to be interesting with the physicality that they bring as well, because I think that they'll try to match what Orlando did, right? I think that's what some of these teams are going to be looking at, what kind of competing against the Celtics is trying to mirror the physicality that the Orlando Magic brought. And the time will tell if that's going to be a test for the Boston Celtics. But like we mentioned, I truly feel confident with this team that they'll be able to get it done regardless of their matchup.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, they're going to try and do what the Magic did, but I don't
Yep.
believe they will. Honestly, I don't think they have like the capability of doing that, and especially at a high level. But I think a lot of people have some stuff against the Knicks as well. A lot of New York ties on that Pistons side as well. I believe
Yep.
Dennis Schroeder was a Knick. Tim
Hmm.
Hardaway Jr. was a Knick. Tobias Harris from Long Island. So kind of playing these New York Knick guys. I mean, they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, just like Porzingis. So they're going to play a little bit harder.
Hmm.
But I mean, Bruce, I think the Knicks are going to kind of pull this one out, and that's who we're going to see in the next round. But like I said, man, the Knicks are going to have to do a lot of film study on how they're going to guard this Celtics team because I truly don't understand how they're going to do it at a high level and also be able to score the ball.
No, I completely agree. I think they will match up against the Knicks regardless if it's in 6 or if it's in 7. I do think that this Knicks team will come out victorious. And for the Boston Celtics, that will be a blessing because they will have the ability to rest up, study some film on the Knicks, and then, like you mentioned, the Knicks have to really figure out how they're going to be able to combat this Boston Celtics team because it clearly showed in the regular season, not even just versus the Boston Celtics, but other top teams like the Thunder, the Cavs, that they could not compete and win these regular season games. And if they can't win one game in the season regularly, there's no way that they're going to be able to string 4 games through 7 and be able to take down the Boston Celtics. But we broke down some great news with this Celtics team on this live stream, Patrick. Everything just fell perfectly into place for Boston here with this last couple of stretch, getting this extra rest with the game starting on Monday. The Pistons and Knicks still having their series continue, and obviously Jayson Tatum playing great through this injury, Jaylen Brown looking 100% perfect in with dealing with his knee, and hopefully having Jrue Holiday back as well. We want to thank you guys for tuning into this stream. Me and Patrick go live every single Wednesday, breaking down everything revolving around this Celtics team. And you guys really came out and showed today. We had about 20, 25 people in the stream at some point. So I really do appreciate all the support that you guys were giving us and liking the stream, coming through and hanging out. If you commented, thank you so much for being here. Hope to see you in the next stream. And if you do enjoy the content, make sure to hit the subscribe button as we upload Celtics videos and go into depth on the Celtics team through the playoffs and after. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys again, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your night, and go Boston Celtics.